This presentation will focus on modern Western and Central African nations, just kind of what it's like today. One of the things that sadly represents these countries really well and what they're like today is their economic struggles. Okay, most of these countries are among the poorest countries in the entire world. So it's really kind of a sad thing. And so this happens for a lot of different reasons, but three of kind of the main categories are going to be colonialism, corruption, and farming. And there will be a lot more information about each one of these things, as they will each have their own slide going forward. Remembering that colonialism is when a country comes in and tries to take over another country, or does take over another country, and that second area becomes part of the mother country, of the first country. We need to understand that the mother countries, they're most often, especially in Africa and South America, they were there looking for resources. All right, they weren't all about building up this economy and making this part a wonderful part of their country. That wasn't their plan. Their plan was to go there and take everything that they possibly could to make as much money as they possibly could. All right, and so because of this colonialism, the countries in this area, when they became independent, they really lacked a lot of infrastructure. And infrastructure is one of these words that we kind of got to figure out what that means. All right, infrastructure, definitions right there. It's a body of public works, so things that the government creates that a country needs to support a modern economy. So examples of infrastructure would be roads, bridges, hospitals. So these are the things that the government creates so that all of the people have them and that you really need. And that's why the government is providing them for you. And so when these countries became independent and they didn't have any infrastructure because the mother countries had not prioritized it, it wasn't important to them, they had to borrow money from other countries and go into debt to build up this infrastructure. And again, it's because the colonizing countries, they wanted the resources, but they didn't want to build up the country. They didn't want to build up that economy. Okay, and so these countries all, became and were really reliant on exporting one or two products because those people, their mother countries, wanted those products, and so they built up the economy just to export those one or two products. And that's really dangerous because if the price goes way down on one of your products, then you're making way less money because that is the only thing you can do. You can't transfer out and make more money on something else if you are only selling one thing. And so if the price goes up on the one thing you're selling, that's great. You're doing great. But if it goes down, your entire country can crumble. Your entire economy can crumble. And so this was happening in a lot of these countries. They're trading raw materials, trying to get manufactured goods. They don't have any capacity, any factories to be able to build their own things that they need for life. They had to send out their raw materials and then spend money to get all of the things that they needed for daily life. When you have to do that, that can lead to a negative balance of trade. Now, it's a tricky definition here, but again, it's pretty simple idea. All right, the negative balance of trade is that you are spending more on the things you're importing, on the things you're getting from other countries than you make from your exports. So you are selling, let's say you're selling $100 worth of stuff, but you're buying $500 worth of stuff. So that is a bad thing for an economy to be spending more than you're making, and that is a negative balance of trade because people need many products to survive, and if you're only making one in the country, you have to buy all the other ones from everywhere else. Another category of these economic problems is corruption. And corruption, definition right here, is the use of power for personal gain. So you are the president, you are the leader, and you're using that power to make yourself better off, to make yourself richer or more powerful or more prestigious or whatever. And international observers believe that Nigeria is one of the most corrupt nations in the entire world. And the easiest way to see this is Nigeria is a huge oil exporting country. They're one of the top 10 largest oil exporters in the entire world. However, 70% of Nigerians live on less than $1 a day. That doesn't add up. How can they be making so much money from oil, which we know is worth a lot of money, and still be living on so little money? Well, the issue is the money's mismanaged, because what happens is if you are an oil country, if you are trying to get oil out of the ground, it costs a lot of money to buy the machinery to do that. And so what Nigeria has done, and some other countries, is they've allowed companies from other countries to come in and spend that money and buy all those machines, and those companies do that, and then they get all of the profits, all the money from this natural resource that belongs to Nigeria is being collected by the company, which is headquartered somewhere else. All right, so the people of Nigeria are not benefiting from their own natural resources, right? And in return, the officials, the government officials, the people in charge, are also getting some nice money from that company to keep the deal going. Take some time to write out the answer to this checkpoint question. The last reason for the poverty that's happening is the way that the countries in this region do farming. In the United States, as you know, farmers make huge amounts of food and then they sell it and they make money off of it and then they can buy whatever they want. But most people in West and Central Africa are subsistence farmers. Subsistence farming just means that you survive. The way that you survive is you grow food that you eat. Okay, and so you're growing your own food, and that's it. That's all you get. And so in Mali, for example, 80% of the people grow their own food to eat. Okay, 80% of the people survive in this way. However, in West and Central Africa, farming is really, really hard. Okay, and that's why you can't build these big farms that you can sell a whole lot of money for, and you have, or sell a whole bunch of crops for money, okay, and you have to continue this subsistence farming, all right? And the reason is it's bad land. There's bad soil, it's dry, you don't have consistent rains, you have seasonal rains, not getting water all the time, okay? The other thing is if you're subsistence farming and you're making the food to put into your mouth, you're not making any money, and so you can't afford any equipment that makes farming easier. And last but not least, some of the workers are your children. So you and your spouse and then your children are the ones that are out trying to work the farm and get the food that you need to survive. However, the children have the opportunity to go to school, but if you send your kid to school, you have less workers on the farm, and so you have to decide what's important. Is it important enough to send the kids to school and have the opportunity to grow in school that you are willing to make it harder for you to make enough food to eat? Most of the people in the area do value education very highly and do send their kids, but they have to make this decision, which is really difficult. There are also political challenges in West and Central Africa, and a lot of this has to do with the colonialism too, because the people came in from other countries, they took over large pieces of land, and then they cut them into countries, and they created the borders, okay? And what they did is they came from outside. They didn't have knowledge of what the ethnic groups were or what they were like or if they got along or not. Okay, and so they would cut these borders, and sometimes they would cut right through an area where two ethnic groups were close by but didn't get along, right? And so these two ethnic groups, they'd put them in the same country and expect them to be able to get along when they were independent, all right? And that was not a good decision. Borders made by people that had no knowledge of these ethnic groups ended up turning into a big mess because there also are not very many resources, right? Poverty, weak economies in this area create this situation where there are not very many resources for the people, And there are a lot of necessities. You have to have these things to survive, and so people are competing over them, and they're competing with other ethnic groups, with other families, with other people, which is also another challenge of the politics of the area. And then this ethnic violence, it turns eventually into violence, and this violence can lead to these big wars, these civil wars. Okay, the civil wars, they damage the economy, and they hurt the ability to make good governments. And these damaged economies and bad governments just go into another cycle, which leads to more violence, which leads to more damaged economies, leads to more bad governments, which leads to more violence, and on and on. We learned about Joseph Mobutu in the last set of notes, and so we'll learn about who took over after him, which is a little bit more modern. All right, after Joseph Mobutu was removed, Laurent Kabila came in and took over in 1997. Now, he changed the name from Zaire, the name of the country, from Zaire into the Democratic Republic of Congo. First word, democratic. Great. He's going to set up a democracy, but he did not. He just changed the name. He did not make it into a democracy. He continued to rule it as a dictator. And so, when he took over and started to try and change things, neighboring countries of Uganda and Rwanda both came in and supported, gave weapons, gave money, all that kind of stuff to the former Mobutu's supporters to rebel, to fight back against it. And the reason they did this is because they wanted to take attention away from the ethnic violence that was happening in their countries too, so that they could keep those ethnic conflicts going. And so, trying to, in 1998, get them to fight. A ceasefire took place in 1999, saying, okay, we have to stop, we have to come to the table, we have to negotiate about this instead of killing each other. The fighting never did stop, even during the ceasefire, and Laurent Kabila was assassinated in 2001. When he was assassinated in 2001, his son, Joseph Kabila, took over power. Eventually, with the help of the United Nations, the people in the Democratic Republic of Congo came up with a peace agreement. However, there still is fighting happening. Okay, in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, they're very rich in resources. There's a lot of resources there, and so the rebels are still fighting for control over these resource-rich lands. So much so, these wars have happened that since 1998, about 5 million people have died from the war itself and from the poor conditions caused by the war. Take some time to write your answer to this checkpoint question. Ghana started off in better shape upon their independence than some of these other countries, but there were still some problems. The first president was Kwame Nkrumah. He was the very first president of Ghana, and he started to build up the economy. He started to, allow for the economy to get bigger and better. All right, but eventually he also became a dictator and started to abuse his power, and so in 1966 he was overthrown in a military coup. Military coup just means it's sudden and the military takes over power. They come in and they say, we're taking you out of office. If you don't leave, we're going to kill you. All right, and after this happened in 1966, there was this cycle where there were multiple military takeovers until an Air Force man by the name of Jerry Rawlings took control. And when he took control, he put in a constitutional democracy, right? Kind of like the United States. We write this constitution, and then we have a democracy, and we vote on who is going to be the president, right? And he actually brought this democracy back to Ghana, and he won the first election. So with this democracy, with their resources, with all of that kind of stuff, Ghana is still among one of the fastest growing economies. Their really big resources that they have a lot of are gold and cocoa. And they understand that they need more products to be successful and continue the country's growth. And so they have some goals. Here's the goals of Ghana moving forward. Again, this shows strength of government that they have these good goals. They want to diversify the economy to have more products that they can make money off of. They want to try to give more rights to women, to enfranchise them and make them feel the power and become productive citizens. And then they want to promote the growth of democracy, the lack of corruption, just continue to promote the good government that they have a good start on. Now we're going to shift to talking about the culture of some of these countries in this region. Religion started out as traditional religions, small religions throughout the area, and then two major religions kind of came in. Islam and Christianity. And as you can see, the way that they started in this area is Islam came in and spread south from the Sahara into Mali, which is one of the top Islamic countries in the area. Okay, so spread south from the Sahara into there. And then Christianity was brought by the Europeans and became one of the major religions in the area. And the really, really Christian nation in the area is Angola. Okay, and so those are the two major religions within West and Central Africa. Now let's switch over to some of the arts and some of the things that they do for enjoyment, for pleasure. There really is a mixture of traditional and modern all throughout. So the arts, the dance, the games, all these different things they're going to include the traditional things as well as brand new modern ideals. So dance, for instance, many of the countries have traditional dance and they have modern ballet. Are very popular in that area. Some of the games, like for instance in Senegal, the two most popular sports are soccer, which is a modern sport, and traditional Senegalese wrestling, which I have a picture of here. Okay, and so that's kind of interesting. And then they also have this culture of storytelling to pass down history. And so they have people known as griots who tell stories through music. Okay, and so they're storytellers doing this while they're over a beat. And a lot of people think that modern hip hop, the way that hip hop and rap works right now, came from these griots. So trying to tell a story over a beat, over the music, through music, right? Film is also thriving in this area, and in the films and the movies that they're making, there is a lot of African tradition shown, as well as modern issues of Africa that are dealt with within these movies. So now we're going to look at some more of the problems in West and Central Africa. Some of these major ones, we'll start off with warfare. Warfare, young and old people, everybody is affected by warfare. For instance, in Sierra Leone, there are 10,000 children soldiers, okay, kids who are expected to fight and given weapons, and asked to go out and die in the name of something that they don't even really understand. And so that's kind of a weird. It's weird to us to think that that's happening, often in just ethnic conflicts, just over what type of person you are versus the other person. Also in the Democratic Republic of Congo, we already talked about some of their issues, but in 2007 alone, 1.5 million people were displaced. So that could mean you died, but it also could just mean that you had to leave your home and go live somewhere else. You had to go. So that could include refugees and anybody like that. Poverty is another huge problem in West and Central Africa. In West Africa, 15% of people are undernourished. In Central Africa, 50% of people are undernourished. Undernourished means they do not have enough food. Okay, so they are slowly starving to death. All right, and so the reason they don't have it is because the benefits from the natural resources in the area are not going to the people. They are going only to the leaders and to the foreign companies who come in and process and take those natural resources. Disease is another big problem in Africa, and a lot of that is connected to the undernourishment. When you don't have enough food, you're more vulnerable to getting sick, and you can have worse results from getting sick. And so things like sleeping sickness and malaria and AIDS are rampant and hitting this area really hard. Write out your 3 questions that you will ask. So in order to try to foster development, to continue economic development, and end poverty in Africa, the African Union was created in 2002. Their big goals were to unify the Africans, to do four things: to try to end poverty, to try to create more development, create these more diversified economies, more infrastructure, all those kinds of things. If there's fighting in a country, they also have peacekeepers, soldiers who are from many different African nations to come in and stop fights within countries. And then last but not least, they are taking help from other organizations and other countries to try and develop economic programs so that all of the economies in the continent really can become stronger. Some of the things the African Union is doing to promote development throughout the future is trying to spread more democracy instead of having those dictatorships where people are abusing their power and becoming corrupt. Trying to, again, get more women's rights throughout Africa. Trying to develop that infrastructure that is really important for citizens on a daily basis. And then also trying to develop social services, things that the government provides for you, like education, healthcare, on and on and on. Anything that the government does for their people. And so how do we get there? All right, well, what's the plan? What are some of the small things that they actually can do? Two of the major ones are microcredit and new technology. We learned a little bit about microcredit before, but again, just to define it, it's small loans for small businesses just to keep them going. And you're actually more likely to get paid back if you're giving out a small loan than if you give these huge loans out. And so usually less than $200, just a small loan, because maybe farmer X just needs some seeds to be able to start his crop, and so you can give him a couple $100. He can buy what he needs and make enough money to survive and to pay you back. Also new technology, for example, hydroelectricity, the use of dams like is shown in this picture, is very important part of the economic development of these countries because it creates electricity for the people. All right, and so in Angola alone, 75% of the electricity is created through dams, through hydroelectricity.